Excessive thinking is a very common problem that people seem to share, especially when meditating. It becomes much more noticeable, and it can lead to various negative effects such as anxiety or depression because the brain doesn't actually know the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience that's happening. So, for example, if you follow a hypothetical scenario of something that could go wrong, you're going to feel all of the emotions that would come along with that as if it were really happening. So, you're putting yourself through all this unnecessary stress. And as soon as you realize that this is what's happening, it just becomes silly to persist in entertaining these thought loops. Even if it's a positive hypothetical scenario, it could result in negative emotions because you'll realize that was only your imagination and it's not in reality. So, how do you stop this excessive thinking? Well, it's first important to understand the source of the problem. Why does excessive thinking happen? Try to reflect on a moment when you were trying to meditate and silence your mind, and then you got sucked into a thought loop. Notice what it was that really enticed you to entertain those thoughts. I think there's two fundamental reasons why we follow these thought loops and get sucked in and lost in imagination. The first is boredom. We don't like boredom. The brain is constantly seeking stimuli. It wants something to always be happening. It wants to be figuring things out about reality. So it doesn't like to just sit with boredom and the thoughts it finds to be entertaining. So the first source of the problem is that you're bored and you're trying to escape boredom. You find your thoughts interesting, and so you follow them. And I think the second primary reason for the problem is problem solving. You think that by following these thoughts, you're going to work out a problem that you need the answer to. And in some cases, that can be true. Thinking can be productive. It's a useful thing to be able to problem solve and reflect on ideas. However, of course, too much of anything can become detrimental. So we have to notice that the brain is in this habit of trying to solve problems, and it doesn't always need to be doing that. There's a certain amount of trust that we could give to the body, to our being, to problem solve whenever it's met with the circumstance. We don't need to fill up our free time with all of this problem solving to try to get ahead of ourselves, to prevent problems, because there's no end to that. The thoughts aren't going to stop coming, and you'll find that you can never actually examine all of the factors to situations. So it's pointless to just follow thought after thought, trying to work everything out. You have to just let the body take care of whatever it needs to take care of in the moment. And if you're not directly faced with a problem, allow yourself to not entertain it. You have to trust your biology. So those are the two main sources of the problem that I could find, at least. Maybe you could find some more. So what is the solution to this problem of excessive thinking? Well, it's simply to become less interested in your own thoughts. But I know that's probably easier said than done. So we'll go into the how. How do you apply this solution? What I find helped immensely was to notice that I don't actually choose my thoughts at all. When I'm paying very close attention and I'm being completely honest about the nature of thoughts, I find that thoughts just spontaneously appear without my consent. And it's in noticing this that the thoughts become less personal. They're no longer my thoughts, they're just thoughts appearing. And just because a thought appears, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's worthy of my attention, because a thought is based on prior conditioning. It's a neural pathway that's been set in stone by prior circumstances. And none of that has really been chosen by me, at least not consciously. So simply noticing that thoughts aren't really a personal situation can help create some distance from them. It gives you less credence for the thoughts that appear. It makes it easier to not entertain any thought that pops up. You could consider unwanted thoughts as like someone else's mail that was falsely placed into your mailbox. You don't really have to pay attention to them just because they show up. They're not really for you. So when you place unwanted thoughts into this context, it becomes much easier to just allow them to dissolve, to not fuel them by your attention. And this is another important thing to notice. Your attention is the thing that fuels your experience. The more attention you give to something, the more it becomes reified. It seems to be more real, and it starts showing up more often as you fixate your attention on whatever that is. So if you find yourself to be bothered by unwanted thoughts on a very regular basis, you simply have to detract your attention from them. And over time, you'll notice that these unwanted thoughts, they show up less and less often. But it's like working out. You have to stay consistent with it. And this is ultimately a matter of self-discipline and how bothered by excessive thinking you actually are. Because if you're not bothered enough by it, then you're not really going to stay consistent with this. And you'll find yourself, again, just thinking thought after thought and following any kind of hypothetical scenario that appears. And that'll just continue until you do reach that point where enough is enough. And if you have any questions about this or related topics in regards to the nature of mind or meditation, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if it requires a lengthy enough explanation, I may consider making a video about it in the future.